He had it all: a loving, pregnant wife, a billion-dollar merger on the horizon, and a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But Marcus Vance was a man who wanted more. He called his wife, Serafina, a liability. He humiliated her, betrayed her, and threw her out of his home to make room for his mistress. He thought he was untouchable. What he didn't know was that Serafina's quiet, unassuming father wasn't just comfortable, he was a tycoon. And when a tycoon's daughter is betrayed, the fall doesn't just hurt. It's absolute. The chandeliers at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's gala dripped crystals like frozen rain, each one reflecting the strained smile on Serafina Vance's face. At 7 months pregnant, her feet ached in her custom-made heels, and the sheer weight of her emerald and diamond necklace, a push present from her husband Marcus, felt more like a beautiful yoke than a gift. "Marcus, darling, I'm feeling a little faint," Serafina murmured, touching his arm. "Do you think we could?" Marcus Vance didn't look at her. His eyes, a sharp, metallic blue, were scanning the room, hunting for his next opportunity. He was a man carved from ambition, handsome in the way a predator is handsome. He ran Vance Innovations, a tech startup that had ballooned in valuation, and he was on the cusp of his masterpiece, a merger with the Japanese conglomerate Yoshida Corp. "In a minute, Sarah," he said, his voice a low, impatient hum. He patted her hand dismissively. "Go sit by the pillar. I need to speak to the board member from Sterling Thorne Capital." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This is for us, for the baby." Serafina nodded, retreating to the relative quiet of a marble alcove. This was her life now, a beautiful backdrop for her husband's meteoric rise. She had met Marcus 3 years ago. She'd been working as a curator at a small gallery, and he'd been a charming, relentless force of nature. She loved him, or at least she loved the man he had been. The man who was now schmoozing by the Rodin sculptures was a stranger, all hard edges and cold calculations. She rubbed her swollen belly. This baby, a boy, was supposed to fix the growing chasm between them. Instead, it seemed to have accelerated Marcus's detachment. He complained about her hormonal state, her fatigue, her new rounded shape. She pulled out her phone and found a text from her father, Arthur Hayes. Serafina smiled, a genuine one this time. Her father was her anchor. He was a quiet man, semi-retired, who managed his family investments from a sprawling, comfortable estate in upstate New York. He'd never been flashy, preferring old books and long walks to the glittering shark tank Marcus adored. Marcus found him pleasantly irrelevant, a relic of old money who didn't understand the speed of the new world. She didn't tell him that Marcus had snapped at her in the car, angry that she'd asked him to slow down. She didn't tell him that networking looked a lot like flirting. An hour later, her feet were numb. She decided to find Marcus. They had to leave. She navigated the maze of tables, the air thick with perfume and the sound of false laughter. She checked the main hall, the terrace, and then the private donor lounge. She found him in a secluded hallway, tucked behind a tapestry. He wasn't alone. With him was a woman Serafina recognized, Chloe Dubois. Chloe was a razor-sharp VP from a rival firm, known for her merciless tactics and her couture wardrobe. She was the opposite of Serafina, sleek, cold, and not at all pregnant. Marcus had his back to the hallway, but Serafina could see Chloe's face. She was laughing, her scarlet-painted fingernail tracing the lapel of Marcus's tuxedo. "You're sure she won't be a problem?" Chloe murmured, her voice like expensive whiskey. "The timing is messy." "She's not a problem. She's a formality," Marcus said. Serafina's blood turned to ice. His voice was laced with a contempt she had never heard. She's emotional pregnant barely understands what I do. She thinks her father's investments are impressive. It's adorable. Chloe tilted her head. And the deal, Yoshida, is secure. As of this morning, Marcus said, his voice dropping. The moment the ink is dry, I'm filing. The prenup is ironclad. She gets her trust fund back and a small settlement. By the time the baby's born, she'll be a memory. Serafina's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Filing. Prenup. Settlement. And us, Chloe purred. Marcus leaned in. Serafina saw his hand go into his pocket. He pulled out a small black velvet box. Not a ring box. Something flatter. For the new VP of the merged company, he whispered. A key to my penthouse and my future. He kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was a hungry, possessive kiss, a claim of ownership. Serafina didn't make a sound. She backed away her vision, tunneling the sound of the orchestra fading into a dull roar. The baby kicked a sharp, sudden jab, as if he too could feel the betrayal. She stumbled out of the museum, past the security guards and the flashing cameras, and hailed a cab, the cold night air hitting her face as the first scalding tear fell. The cage wasn't gilded. It was just a cage. And the door had just been slammed shut. The taxi ride back to their penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue was a blur of traffic lights and suffocating panic. Serafina paid the driver with a trembling hand, her mind replaying the scene over and over. A formality. She'll be a memory. She let herself into the vast, silent apartment. It was sterile, decorated by an interior designer Marcus had hired, all chrome and glass and shades of grey. It had never felt like a home. Tonight, it felt like a tomb. She went straight to Marcus's home office. It was usually locked, but in his haste for the gala, he had left it ajar. She flicked on the desk lamp. His laptop was open. He was so arrogant, so sure of her passivity, that he hadn't even bothered to close his files. It didn't take long. There was a folder on his desktop labeled Project New Dawn. She clicked it. Inside were not just files on the Yoshida merger, but private financial statements, offshore account details, and a subfolder simply titled Dissolution. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She clicked it. There it was. A petition for dissolution of marriage, drafted by the most ruthless divorce attorney in New York, a man named Silas Croft. It was dated 3 weeks ago, but it was the other documents that made her sick. He had systematically been moving assets, funneling money from Vance Innovations into private accounts that weren't in her name. He was draining the company before the merger, creating a separate personal fortune. He wasn't just planning to divorce her. He was planning to leave her with nothing but the scraps outlined in their prenuptial agreement, which she had signed without a second thought, believing in their love. And then she saw the emails, a long, damning chain between Marcus and Chloe Dubois. Marcus. The obstetrician confirmed. 7 months. We have to move fast. Once the deal closes, I file. The pregnancy complicates the optics, but Silas says we can paint her as unstable, hormonal, depressed. Chloe. As long as it doesn't spook Yoshida. My contacts there are solid, but they're traditionalists. Marcus. They won't know until it's done. By then, I'll be the new face of their US operations, and you'll be by my side. She'll be back upstate with her quaint, boring father before the first quarterly report is due. Quaint, boring father. Serafina whispered the words, tasting like ash. She heard the elevator ding, the private elevator that opened directly into their foyer. Her body went rigid. Marcus stepped in, whistling softly. He saw her, and his face tightened. "What are you doing up? And why are you in my office?" Serafina didn't move from his chair. She just looked at him, the woman he thought was a hormonal, unstable formality. "Project New Dawn," she said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "Is that what you're calling it? Your new life with Chloe? The one you're building by betraying your pregnant wife?" Marcus's casual arrogance evaporated, replaced by a flash of pure, cold fury. He saw the laptop screen. He knew he was caught. "You went through my things," he hissed. "You're dissolving our marriage?" She shot back, standing up, her hand on her belly. "You're calling me unstable to your lawyers. You're giving her a key to our home." The confession in the hallway had broken her heart. The evidence on the laptop had ignited a cold fire she didn't know she possessed. Marcus didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He advanced on her, his face a mask of contempt. "So you know," he spat. "Good. It saves me a boring conversation. Yes, I'm leaving you. This. He gestured to her and her stomach. "This isn't the life I want. You're slow. You're dull. You're a chain around my neck. I'm merging with Yoshida. I'm going to be worth $10 billion. I need a partner, not a dependent." "I am your wife," she choked out, tears welling. "I am carrying your child." "A child I never wanted," he roared, and the cruelty of it silenced her. "I wanted a dynasty. You gave me a burden." Chloe understands ambition. She understands power. You understand galleries. And your father's dusty old money. He grabbed her arm. "Get out of my office." "Your office?" she cried, pulling away. "This is my home, too." "No," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a terrifying calm. He walked to the intercom. "It's my penthouse. My name is on the deed. Your prenup entitles you to your dowry, and that's it. And I want you out. Now." He pressed the button for his private security guard in the lobby. "Miguel, Mrs. Vance is leaving. Please escort her from the premises." "Marcus, no." Serafina pleaded, stumbling back. "It's 3 a.m. I'm pregnant. Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care," he said, straightening his tie. He walked to the bar and poured himself a scotch. "Go to a hotel. Go to your father. Go to hell for all I care. The merger signs in 48 hours. When it does, you will be officially irrelevant." The security guard, Miguel, arrived looking deeply uncomfortable. "Sir." "Take her. She can pack 1 bag," Marcus said, turning his back on her. "And if she tries to take anything of value, call the police." "Marcus!" She screamed, a raw, primal sound of pain and disbelief. He just took a sip of his scotch. "Your presence is depressing, Serafina, and bad for business." Miguel gently touched her arm. "Ma'am, please." Numb, defeated, and utterly broken. Serafina let the guard lead her to the bedroom. She packed a small overnight bag, her hands shaking so hard she could barely zip it. Her emerald necklace was still on the dresser. She looked at it, then at her reflection, pale, tear-streaked, pregnant, and discarded. She left the necklace. She wouldn't take a single thing from this monster. As Miguel escorted her to the service elevator, Marcus's voice echoed from the living room, already on the phone. "Chloe, Hi, baby. Yeah, a little hiccup, but it's handled. The place is all ours. I'll see you tomorrow. The elevator doors closed, and Serafina Vance, daughter of one of the richest men in the world, was homeless on the streets of New York. Serafina stood on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue at 3:15 a.m. The city lights, usually so magical, felt garish and mocking. Her phone was at 10% battery. She had her wallet, her small bag, and the weight of her unborn child. She couldn't breathe. The panic was a physical thing, tightening her chest, making her dizzy. Where do I go? He was right. Her friends were his friends. Society people who would side with the money and the power. She hailed a cab, her mind racing. She needed a safe place, a place he couldn't reach her. The Carlyle, she told the driver. It was an old-world hotel, discreet and quiet. She checked in under her maiden name, Serafina Hayes, using her personal credit card, the one her father had given her, not the joint account she shared with Marcus. The concierge, a kind-faced older man, noted her distress and her condition, and silently upgraded her to a suite. Once inside the plush, quiet room, Serafina locked the door, slid to the floor, and finally let go. She wept. She wept for her marriage, for her baby, for the love she thought was real. She cried until her throat was raw and her stomach ached from the force of it. After an hour, the tears subsided, replaced by a cold, clear, vibrating rage. He will not destroy me. He will not destroy this baby. She plugged in her phone. She had one call to make. She dialed. It rang twice. Serafina. My girl, are you all right? It's 4 a.m. His voice, calm, warm, steady. Her father. Dad, she tried, but her voice broke. Sarah, what is it? Where are you? The warmth was gone, replaced by a sudden, sharp urgency. I'm at the Carlyle. Daddy, Marcus, she told him everything. The gala, Chloe Dubois, the laptop, the divorce papers, the financial fraud, the penthouse, being thrown out pregnant in the middle of the night. The line was silent. For a moment she thought he hadn't heard her. Dad, are you there? When he spoke, his voice was unrecognizable. It was not the voice of the kindly, book-loving retiree. It was the voice of a man who built an empire from nothing. A voice that hadn't been used in this way for a very, very long time. It was cold as a glacier. He did what? He said I was a liability. Serafina whispered, a fresh wave of tears coming. He said you were quaint. Another pause. Longer this time. Serafina. Arthur Hayes said, his voice terrifyingly precise. I want you to listen to me. Lock your door. Order some tea and something to eat for the baby. Do not leave the room. Do not speak to anyone. A man named Julian Croft will be at your door in 30 minutes. He is my personal counsel. He is my right hand. Trust him. He will take care of everything. Do you understand? Yes, but... Dad, what are you? I'm going to handle Marcus, Arthur said, and I am going to handle the woman Chloe Dubois. But the merger... Dad, he's worth billions. He's merging with Yoshida Corp. He said he's untouchable. Serafina heard a sound on the other end of the line. It was a laugh, a short, dry, mirthless bark that sent a shiver down her spine. Yoshida Corp, Arthur Hayes asked. Is that who he's merging with? Oh, Marcus, you stupid, stupid boy. Dad, what do you mean? Don't you worry about Yoshida Corp, my girl. Just focus on your health. Focus on my grandchild. I love you. Julian is on his way." The line clicked dead. 400 miles away, in his quaint upstate library, Arthur Hayes stood. He was not in his pajamas. He was in his study, a 20,000-square-foot command center, hidden beneath the old estate filled with data screens and a private server team. He was Arthur Hayes, founder and sole owner of Hayes Consolidated, a $300 billion private global holding company with interests in logistics, finance, technology, and media. He pressed an intercom. "Julian." Julian Croft, a man in a perfectly tailored suit who had been sitting in the adjoining room, entered. "Sir, Ms. Hayes is secure at the Carlisle." "She is." He put her out. "Pregnant. On the street." Julian's face, normally impassive, hardened. "I see. The target is Marcus Vance, Vance Innovations. The merger is with Yoshida Corp." Julian allowed himself a small, predatory smile. "Sir, if you recall, we acquired the controlling interest in Yoshida's parent company 6 months ago through our Singaporean shell. The entire merger is with us." "I recall," Arthur said. "Marcus Vance thinks he's swimming in the ocean. He's been in my shark tank all along. He just didn't know it." Arthur walked to his desk. "He called me quaint Julian. A fatal miscalculation, sir. I want him ruined. Not just beaten. Ruined. I want his company dismantled. I want his merger voided. I want his penthouse seized, his accounts frozen, and his reputation obliterated. I want him to have nothing, and I want it done by morning." "We'll start with Sterling Thorne Capital," Julian said. "The bridge loan for the merger was contingent on his personal guarantee, which we now know is based on fraudulent asset declarations. We'll trigger the covenant clauses." "Do it," Arthur said. "Then call Tokyo. Wake up Mr. Takeda. Tell him the deal is off and why. Send him the file Chloe Dubois's assistant helpfully leaked to us last week, the one showing Marcus's New Dawn offshore accounts. Takeda-san does not appreciate being stolen from." "And Ms. Dubois?" Julian asked. "She chose her side," Arthur said, looking at a photo of a 7-year-old Serafina on his desk. "Make sure she lands hard." "Yes, sir," Julian said. "Julian," Arthur called as his counsel reached the door. "Sir, make it hurt." Marcus Vance woke up at 7:00 a.m., the sunlight streaming into his penthouse. He felt perfect, light, unburdened. Serafina, with her moods and her belly and her perpetual disappointment, was gone. He stretched naked and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked down on Central Park. "This is my city," he said, toasting the view with a glass of water. Today was the day. At 10:00 a.m., the final papers would be signed with Yoshida Corp. By 10:05 a.m., his net worth would be $10 billion. By 11:00 a.m., Silas Croft would be serving Serafina with divorce papers. He'd already sent a car for Chloe. They would celebrate tonight. He showered, dressed in his most expensive suit, a $20,000 Brioni, and headed to his office. He felt the hum of power in his veins. He was untouchable. He walked into the Vance Innovations boardroom at 9:00 a.m. His CFO, David Chen, was waiting along with his legal team. David looked green. "David, you look terrible," Marcus said, clapping him on the back. "Big day champagne by noon, eh?" "Marcus," David said, his voice trembling. "We have a problem." Marcus's good humor soured. "A problem? There are no problems today." Sterling Thorn Capital, David said, holding up his tablet. They just sent this. 6:02 a.m. They're calling our bridge loan, effective immediately. Marcus stared. What? They can't. That loan is secured. It's $500 million. We need it to close the deal. They're citing material breach of covenants and fraudulent misrepresentation of assets. David read his finger shaking. Marcus, what did you do? It's a mistake, a clerical error, Marcus snapped. He grabbed his phone and dialed his private banker at Sterling Thorn, a man he played golf with. It went to voicemail. He tried the man's boss. The man's assistant, a woman who usually fawned over him, was glacial. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. Mr. Harding is in an emergency board meeting. He is unavailable. All accounts associated with Vance Innovations are frozen, pending an internal review. Frozen. The blood drained from his face. This is insane. It gets worse. David whispered, his face ashen. What? Marcus roared. Tokyo. I just got an email from Mr. Takeda's office. They're postponing the signing, indefinitely. Postponing! Marcus was shouting now, his team shrinking back. They can't postpone the deal is signed. It's just a formality. They're citing the same thing, Marcus, gross financial misrepresentation. They said they received a file detailing Project New Dawn. They're accusing you of attempting to defraud Yoshida Corp. And your own company by siphoning assets offshore. Marcus stumbled back. New Dawn. Only he and Chloe knew that name. Chloe. Did she betray him? No, it couldn't be. His phone buzzed. It was a Wall Street Journal news alert. Hayes Consolidated announces strategic partnership with Yoshida Corp. Vance Innovations merger terminated. Marcus read the words, but they didn't make sense. House Consolidated. He knew the name. Everyone did. They were a behemoth, a private monster that swallowed companies whole. But what did they have to do with... He read the article. Hayes Consolidated, the private holding company, run by elusive billionaire Arthur Hayes, announced today it had completed a strategic acquisition of effective immediately terminating a pending merger with Vance Innovations. A spokesperson for Hayes cited a lack of confidence in Vance's leadership and disturbing internal financials. No, Marcus whispered. No. The boardroom phone rang. It was the lobby. Mr. Vance, there are men here from the bank and a Mr. Croft. They have a court order to seize company assets. David Chen was already backing out of the room. I'm calling my lawyer, he stammered. I knew nothing about this, Marcus. I'm out. The legal team followed, scrambling for the exits. Cowards, Marcus screamed. You can't leave. The boardroom doors burst open. It wasn't bankers. It was two uniformed police officers and a man in a suit so sharp it could cut glass. Marcus Vance, the suited man said. Who the hell are you? My name is Julian Croft. I represent Miss Serafina Hayes. I'm here to serve you with a restraining order, freezing all personal and marital assets pending your divorce hearing. Marcus laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. Marital assets. There are no marital assets. The prenup is ironclad. The prenup, Julian said, placing a file on the table, is hereby voided on the grounds of fraudulent inducement and gross marital misconduct. Specifically, the systematic criminal transfer of assets you attempted to hide from your wife. Julian gestured to the police. Mr. Vance is also under investigation for criminal fraud, as reported to the SEC this morning by the board of Yoshida Corp. and Sterling Thorne Capital. You are to vacate these premises." "You can't," Marcus shrieked. "This is my company. It was your company," Julian said, his voice flat. "As of 9:15 a.m., when the bank called your loans, your stock became worthless. Vance Innovations is insolvent. It's over." "This is Serafina." Marcus realized, his mind spinning. "She did this. That bitch." He lunged for the phone to call Chloe. She would fix this. She was smart. Julian Croft simply held up his own phone, playing a voice message. It was Chloe's voice. "Mr. Croft, as I mentioned, I have zero loyalty to Marcus Vance, a complete psychopath. I am emailing you his private server credentials now. In exchange for full immunity and the consulting position at Hayes Consolidated, I'm happy to provide anything you need to put him away for good." Marcus stared at the phone, betrayed by everyone. "Hayes," he whispered the name from the Wall Street Journal article, echoing in his head. "Serafina Hayes. Arthur Hayes." He looked at Julian Croft, a dawning, sickening horror filling his entire being. Her father. Julian Croft smiled a thin, cruel line. "He sends his regards. He said to tell you. He finds you. Quaint." While Marcus Vance's world imploded, Serafina sat in the sun-drenched living room of the Carlyle suite. Julian Croft had arrived as promised, flanked by a private plain-clothed security team. He had been respectful, kind, and terrifyingly efficient. "Ms. Hayes," he had said, "your father has instructed me to ensure your complete safety and comfort. A new secure phone." He handed her one. "A private obstetrician is on her way, just for a wellness check, and I am handling all legal and financial matters." What is my father doing?" she had asked, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "Mr. Hayes," Julian said, "is ensuring a just outcome." Now, hours later, Serafina watched the news on the suite's large television. The story was the lead on every financial network. A stunning collapse. Vance Innovations, once the darling of tech, declared insolvent. Marcus Vance, the charismatic CEO, is reportedly under investigation by the SEC and the Southern District of New York. Sources say the collapse was triggered by the 11th-hour cancellation of a merger with Yoshida Corp., which was simultaneously acquired by the powerhouse Hayes Consolidated. Serafina stared at the screen. Hayes Consolidated. She had always known her father was successful. The estate, the private plane, the effortless generosity. But she, like Marcus, had believed the semi-retired investor persona. She had never wanted to be a tycoon's daughter. She'd wanted a normal life. She'd wanted to be loved for herself. She had never in her entire life Googled her own father. With a trembling finger, she typed Arthur Hayes into her new phone. The results flooded the screen. Forbes, the ghost billionaire. Arthur Hayes, the 300BB man who hides in plain sight. Bloomberg. Inside Hayes, consolidated the private empire that moves the world. Vanity Fair. The Quiet King. How Arthur Hayes controls everything, from shipping to Silicon Valley. There were pictures of him, not just at his local library, but on discreet yachts in meetings in Tokyo, shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers. He wasn't just rich. He was one of the most powerful and most private men on the planet. And Marcus Vance had called him quaint. The full earth-shattering scale of Marcus's miscalculation hit her. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He hadn't just betrayed the daughter of a wealthy man. He had, with his own arrogance, picked a fight with a leviathan. He had tried to defraud a company owned by the man he was simultaneously betraying. The phone rang. It was her father. "Sarah, are you watching the news?" His voice was warm again. The kindly father was back. "Daddy, I never knew," she whispered, looking at an article about his control of global logistics. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what, my girl?" he said gently. "That I had a big, boring company. It's not important. You are important. My grandchild is important. Your happiness was all that mattered. I wanted you to find someone who loved Serafina Hayes, not the Hayes consolidated heiress. It appears I failed to protect you from that." "No, Dad," she said, tears in her eyes. "You didn't fail. I chose him. I was blind." "Well," Arthur said, a hint of steel returning. "The blindness is cured. Now Julian has voided the prenup. He's also filed for an emergency seizure of 50% of all known assets, which unfortunately for Marcus, the SEC is now helping us uncover." "What about Chloe?" Serafina asked, a trace of bitterness in her voice. "Ms. Dubois," Arthur said, "was very cooperative. She provided us with the final piece of the puzzle, Marcus's hidden servers. In exchange, she was offered a consulting position, a very lucrative one." You hired her?" Serafina felt a pang of disbelief. "Oh yes," Arthur said. "Her contract starts tomorrow, and it's terminable at will. Julian is arranging for her consulting to take place at our new data entry facility in Anchorage in January." Serafina couldn't help a small, watery laugh. "Dad." "She'll quit, of course," Arthur continued breezily. "But her reputation on Wall Street after betraying her boss so thoroughly to a competitor, it's finished. No one will ever trust her again. She's radioactive. As for Marcus," his voice hardened, "his house of cards was built on my territory, Sarah. I just blew it down." The penthouse, Arthur explained, was leveraged to the hilt for the bridge loan. With the loan called, the bank was foreclosing today. The cars were leased. The art was rented. The Patek Philippe on his wrist was bought with a credit line that as of 10:00 a.m. no longer existed. "He has nothing?" Serafina asked. "He has the clothes on his back," Arthur Hayes confirmed, "and a staggering amount of personal legal debt. He will be in court for the rest of his life." A new terrible chapter was over. A new uncertain one was beginning. "Come home, Sarah," Arthur said. "Come upstate. Let me take care of you and the baby." "I'm on my way," she said, finally feeling for the first time in months completely safe. Marcus was still standing in the ruins of his boardroom when Julian Croft and the officers left. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother, Marcus. "What is happening?" "The bank just seized our house. They said you used it as collateral." He ignored it. His phone buzzed again. An email from the board of his own building. "Dear Mr. Vance, we are informed of your delinquency. Your access to the premises, including the penthouse and all building amenities, is hereby revoked. Security has been instructed to deny you entry. He was locked out." He stumbled into the hallway. His employees, the people who had worshipped him, wouldn't meet his eye. They were packing their desks, whispering. He was a ghost in his own company. He took the elevator down. When he exited into the lobby, the security guard, the one who used to run to get him cabs, held up a hand. "Sorry, Mr. Vance, I can't let you leave." "What?" "You can't hold me here." "No, sir." "But They're here for your personal effects. The guard pointed. A man in a cheap suit was standing by the door. A repo man. Marcus Vance, the man said, reading from a clipboard. I'm here for a Patek Philippe Grandmaster Chime reference, 6300G purchased via a Sterling Thorn credit line. I need you to hand it over. You're taking my watch, Marcus stammered, his voice cracking. Yes, sir, or the officers upstairs can add theft to your list. Slowly, his hands shaking, Marcus undid the clasp. The $2.5 million watch, his symbol of success, felt suddenly heavy and cold. He dropped it into the man's outstretched cloth bag. The repo man checked it off. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day. Marcus pushed through the revolving doors, shoeless, watchless, and broken. He stood on the sidewalk, the city noise deafening. He had no office, no company, no car, no home. He checked his wallet. He had $400 in cash. He began to walk. He didn't know where. He walked for miles in his $20,000 suit, his mind a howling void. He ended up in front of the penthouse, his home. He tried the service entrance. The new security guard, a man he didn't recognize, stepped in front of him. Can I help you? I'm Marcus Vance. I live here. The guard checked his list. No, sir, you don't. You need to leave, or I'm calling the police. Defeated, he slumped onto a bench in Central Park directly across from the building. His building. He had to call her. Serafina. She was kind. She was gentle. She loved him once. She wouldn't let this happen. She wouldn't let him, the father of her child, be destitute. He pulled out his phone, which was already flashing low battery. He dialed the number he knew by heart. It rang once. A man answered. Not Serafina. Vance? The voice was cold familiar. Julian Croft. Where is she? Marcus demanded, trying to summon his old authority. Where is my wife? I need to speak to her. Ms. Hayes is unavailable, Julian said. She is currently at her father's estate under medical care, resting from the significant emotional distress you caused her. I need to talk to her. This is a misunderstanding. Her father, I didn't know. That, Julian said, is the single most obvious fact in this entire affair. You didn't know. You didn't bother to know. You married a woman and never once saw her, only her formality. You can't do this. Marcus was sobbing now, a pathetic, wrecked sound. I have nothing. You've taken everything. No, Mr. Vance. We didn't take anything. Julian corrected his voice, devoid of all emotion. We simply revealed the truth. The everything you had was a fantasy built on fraud and leverage. It was a house of cards. Mr. Hayes. He just owns the table it was built on. Please, Marcus begged. I'll do anything. I'll apologize. Please, I'm the father of her baby. You dismissed that baby as a burden, Julian said. You will have no contact with Ms. Hayes or the child ever. Your parental rights will be terminated on the grounds of endangerment and gross misconduct. If you attempt to contact her or her father again, you will be arrested. Is that clear? What am I supposed to do? Marcus whispered. I believe the modern parlance is figure it out. Goodbye, Mr. Vance. The line went dead. Marcus sat there as the sun set the lights of his penthouse turning on one by one. Someone was inside. Cleaners, probably. Liquidators. His phone died. He was alone. With $400, his ruined suit, and a name that was now synonymous with failure. The reckoning was complete. 3 months passed. The winter snows fell heavily on the 10,000-acre Hayes estate upstate. It was quiet, peaceful. Serafina sat in a window seat, a thick cashmere blanket over her lap, her belly now round and full. Her due date was 2 weeks away. She was not the same woman who had been thrown out of her penthouse. The shock had given way to grief, and the grief had given way to a quiet, hard-won strength. She was in therapy. She was swimming every day in the estate's indoor pool, and she was working. Her father, seeing the sharp intelligence in her that Marcus had dismissed as dull, had given her a new project heading the philanthropic Hayes Foundation. She was restructuring their maternal and child health initiative, pouring millions into shelters for domestic abuse victims and programs for single mothers. She was using her pain to build something real. "You're glowing, Sarah," Arthur said, walking in with 2 cups of decaf tea. "I feel good, Dad," she said, and she meant it. "I feel like myself, the version of myself I was before him." "Good. That's my girl." He sat across from her, the fireplace crackling between them. What happened to him?" she asked. She didn't ask often, but today she needed to know. Arthur sipped his tea. "Marcus Vance, he's no longer a person of interest." "Dad," Arthur sighed. "He's in Ohio. After spending his last $400 on a bus ticket, he was homeless for a time. He sold his other suit for food. He eventually found work." "Work where?" "Night manager." Arthur said, "At a truck stop motel off I-70. He clears $400 a week. He lives in one of the back rooms. Most of his wages are garnished to pay the preliminary judgments against him. He'll be in debt for the rest of his life." Serafina was quiet. She felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just a vast, empty distance. He was a stranger, a ghost. "And Chloe?" "She lasted 48 hours in Anchorage," Arthur said with a small smile. "She is currently being sued by 3 different firms for breach of contract. Julian Croft also, anonymously, sent her new potential employers the recording of her betraying Marcus. As I said, radioactive." Serafina nodded, closing that chapter for good. "Good." She looked out the window. "I've decided on a name for the baby." "Oh, Theodore Arthur Hayes," she said. Arthur's eyes, the eyes of the $300 billion ghost, filled with tears. He reached across and squeezed her hand. That's a fine name." Meanwhile in Ohio, the bell on the motel lobby door jingled. Marcus looked up from the stained counter, his eyes raw with fatigue. A businessman in a crisp suit walked in. "One night," the man said, tossing a credit card. Marcus ran the card. "Declined." "Sorry, sir. It's declined." "What, run it again?" the man snapped. Marcus ran it. "Declined." "Look," the man said, "I'm on my way to a meeting. Wait. Don't I know you?" Marcus froze. The man was squinting at him. Holy hell. You're Marcus Vance. You were on the cover of Forbes." Marcus looked down, his face burning with a shame so profound it was suffocating. "No," he mumbled, his voice hoarse. "You're mistaken. I'm nobody." The businessman stared, then recognition dawned. Wow. The fall. It really was. Man. He laughed, pulling out cash. "Guess I'll pay cash then. Keep the change." Marcus took the money, his hand trembling, and handed the man a key. He didn't watch him walk away. He just stared at his own reflection in the dark check-in screen, a tired, broken man in a cheap polyester uniform. He was right. He was nobody. The berth was worlds away from the sterile, cold luxury of her former life. Serafina had chosen a private, discreet birthing center, not a high-profile hospital. The room was warm, filled with soft light, and the only person in the waiting room was her father. When the final moment came after hours of labor, she held her son for the first time. The world, which had been a chaotic, roaring storm of betrayal and legal battles, snapped into perfect, silent focus. She looked at his tiny, perfect face, his eyes squeezed shut, his small hand gripping her finger with surprising strength. All the pain, all the humiliation, all the nights spent weeping for the man she thought she loved. It all evaporated. It wasn't just gone. It was insignificant. It was ash. This tiny 7-pound life in her arms was the only thing that had ever truly mattered. This was her blood, her future. This was not a burden. He was a miracle. "He's beautiful, Sarah," Arthur Hayes said, his voice thick. He was standing in the doorway. His bespoke suit rumpled his eyes red. The $300 billion Tycoon was gone, replaced by a simple grandfather, utterly undone by the sight. "What's his name, my girl?" he whispered, walking over to touch the baby's head with a trembling finger. "Theodore Arthur Hayes," Serafina said, her voice clear and strong. Arthur's composure broke. He turned away for a moment, wiping his eyes before sitting on the edge of her bed. "A fine name. A strong name." He looked at his daughter, his pride a tangible thing. "He has your strength, Serafina. Never forget that." Life moved forward, not with a crawl, but with a confident, driving purpose. The first year of Theo's life was a whirlwind, but not of nannies and social events. Serafina moved into her own home, a warm, elegant brownstone in the city close to her father's New York office. She officially took the helm of the Hayes Foundation, and she was not a figurehead. She poured her anger, her intelligence, and her newfound clarity into her work. The Serafina Hayes Initiative for Maternal and Child Safety was born. She didn't just write checks. She was in the trenches. 6 months after Theo was born, she stood before a hostile congressional subcommittee advocating for new laws to protect spouses from financial fraud in divorce. Mr. Vance's actions were an anomaly, a scandal. A smug senator from a rival's payroll interrupted. "The law doesn't need to change for one woman's bad marriage." The old Serafina would have shrunk. The new one leaned into the microphone. "Senator," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber, "my bad marriage is the reality for thousands of women who lack my resources. They don't have a Hayes Consolidated to protect them. They are left with nothing. My scandal, as you call it, is a spotlight, and I intend to aim it at every dark corner you and your colleagues would prefer to ignore. Now, if you'll let me return to the specifics of asset declaration reform." She didn't just win the argument, she dominated it. The bill passed. She was there to cut the ribbon on the first Theo's House, a state-of-the-art shelter for women and children fleeing domestic abuse. She held her son's hand as she spoke not of her own story, but of the stories of the women she was there to help. She had turned her pain into a shield for others. 2 years passed. In a sterile, glass-walled conference room in a Chicago high-rise, Chloe Dubois was on the verge of victory. It had been a brutal 2 years. The 48 hours in Anchorage had been a special kind of hell, but the hell that followed was worse. Radioactive, Arthur had called her, and he was right. No firm on Wall Street would touch her. Her name was Poison. But Chloe was a survivor. She had changed her name. She'd moved to Chicago, taken a low-level job at a promising mid-level logistics firm, and clawed her way up. She was ruthless, brilliant, and had hidden her past perfectly. Today was the final interview, the big one, Senior Vice President of Midwest Operations. She had nailed it. "Your resume is spectacular, Catherine," the CEO, Mr. Harris, said, using her new name. "Your tactics are aggressive. I like that. The board agrees. There's just one final formality." Chloe smiled, smoothing her suit. "Of course." "Our firm was acquired 6 months ago," Harris said. "A massive private equity buyout. We are now part of a much larger global family. All executive hires must be personally signed off by the head of acquisitions from the parent company. He's here now." The door opened. Chloe Dubois's blood didn't just run cold. It turned to solid ice. Julian Croft walked in. He looked exactly the same. The perfect suit, the dead eyes, the air of absolute final authority. He didn't look at Chloe. He walked to the head of the table. Mr. Harris beamed. "Mr. Croft, great to see you. This is Catherine Myers, our top candidate." Julian opened a file. He looked at Chloe, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something. It was distaste, like looking at an insect. "Ms. Dubois," he said, his voice as flat and final as it had been on the phone 2 years ago. The CEO's smile vanished. "What, Mr. Croft? This is Catherine Myers. This, Julian said, is Chloe Dubois, a former executive at a tech firm that attempted to criminally defraud one of our largest partners. She actively participated in the conspiracy, then betrayed her co-conspirator to save herself. A betrayal she failed to see through." "That's a lie!" Chloe shrieked, her mask of competence shattering. I have no idea who that is. I helped you. I gave you the data." "You are a traitor, Ms. Dubois," Julian said, as if explaining a simple fact. "You betray your boss. You betray your partners. You betray your own identity. Hayes Consolidated, and by extension, this firm has a zero-tolerance policy for your specific brand of liability." You own this place," Chloe whispered, the scale of her defeat crashing down on her. "I've been working for you. You've been in our shark tank all along. You just didn't know it," Julian said, echoing his master's words. He looked at the stunned CEO. "Mr. Harris, we are not hiring this woman. Have security escort her out, and I'd recommend a full audit of her department. Traitors tend to be creatures of habit." Chloe didn't even scream this time. She was hollow. As the security guards took her arms, she saw a TV in the lobby. On the screen was Serafina Hayes, smiling, cutting a ribbon with her young son Theo. The chyron read, "Hayes Foundation, pledges, 500 to global women's initiatives." The story ended not with a bang, but with the quiet, final click of a closing door. She was finished. For good. That evening, Serafina stood on the balcony of her brownstone. The city glittered below. She heard small footsteps, and then felt a tug on her pants. "Up, Mummy!" She laughed, sweeping Theo into her arms. He was 3 now, bright and loud and full of joy. "Look at the lights, Theo," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. "It's all so big, isn't it?" "Big," he echoed. She held him tight, her heart full. She thought for a fleeting second of a man in a polyester uniform at a truck stop, a man whose face she could barely remember, a man who had tried to erase her and had instead given her the world. Marcus Vance had wanted a dynasty. He had wanted power. He had wanted a legacy. Serafina looked at the son in her arms and at the city she was helping to change. "He wanted it all," she whispered to the wind. "And in the end, I'm the one who got it." She went inside to her son, her father, and her life. She was not a victim. She was not an heiress. She was a haze. And she was just getting started. Karma isn't always instant, but when it arrives, it's often total. Marcus Vance didn't just lose his money. He lost his name, his future, and his identity. He flew too close to the sun, forgetting that the woman he dismissed as a liability was the daughter of the man who owned the sky. Serafina, in contrast, turned her deepest pain into her greatest power. She rebuilt her life, not on a foundation of revenge, but of purpose, creating a true legacy for her son. This story shows that true strength isn't about how much you have, but about who you are when it's all taken away. What did you think of Marcus's downfall? Was it justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of betrayal and ultimate justice, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life drama.